Welcome back to another episode of Rewiring Health. I know this is going to be a great conversation. I'm very honored to be joined by Aneta Mruz. So thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Cully. Thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely. So I want to jump right in because what I love is just hear people's stories. That's really what makes everyone so unique, is all the things they've been through and where it's brought them along their journey. So do you mind sharing your journey and where you started and how it got you to what you do today and who you help today?
Sure. So my journey started with, I always say that we live life or we understand life backwards. So now when I reflect, I know exactly what brought me here. Maybe like 4 years ago, I might have still been a little like, what are we doing here? Like what path is this that's bringing me out of what? But if I reflect, I was living a very unconscious life,
Mhm.
people pleasing to the core. And it was really hard for me to even understand anything about change because I don't think I was ever taught that you as an individual can change. Even though I know in psychology, like you go to high school, you learn about psychology, the human condition. I don't know if they really take you through the possibilities of becoming who you're supposed to be or transcending certain even like cognitive habits, right? So what really brought me to where I am today is the desire to help other women. I started a Facebook group for women with intrusive thoughts postpartum. I received an OCD diagnosis postpartum, and that really, when I understood what OCD was, and OCD is an anxiety disorder, and when I understood what it was, that intrusive thoughts, it's just energy. You're supposed to separate. When I understood what it was, I'm like, I have to help other women. I have to help other and women because I actually started postpartum. So I was like, women, postpartum experiencing intrusive thoughts. But what I recognized is that what I recognize now is
Mhm.
that what brought me there is that it got to the point of constant like rumination, constant thinking, over analyzing, self internalizing everything, self blame, all this stuff. And it when we talk about perfectionism, I I I didn't really have this need to excel and try my hardest. I was more so motivated by pleasing other people, whatever that looked like, right? So it was this unconsciously lived life. Pregnancy came, postpartum came, and it really just shifted me into understanding what thought actually is through a mental health diagnosis. And
Mhm.
now I help other individuals, not in psychology, but with life coaching and energy mentorship. So they can understand what is theirs, what is not, what not to give your energy to, and what to focus on, I guess you can say, in a nutshell. So
Yeah. I love that. And there's so many things you're saying. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can totally relate to that. That like you can't get out of your head. And then there's like, then it just becomes this vicious cycle of like, what is wrong with me? Why am I thinking all these thoughts? And then you go right back to the thoughts and it can become menacing after a while. And especially postpartum, it's like there's so many things that are going on. Like I know I experienced a lot of things after having my babies too. And it's like,
yeah.
it's a really challenging time. So when you combine all those things on top of like that subconscious belief of people pleasing, it's like a perfect storm. So
Yes.
it's amazing that you were able to get yourself to a place where you could have a good understanding of yourself and almost have that compassion for yourself, that there's nothing wrong with you. It's like your system is trying to tell you something. And
Yeah.
yeah, I
I love
love
that you
that.
just said that.
How did you start? Because it can feel like if someone's listening to this, and I know me of years ago, I'd be like, oh, how do I even start? Like, I feel like this is just who I am. I'll never get out of it. And just like you said, like you're never taught how to really
Yeah.
understand yourself and that you can change. How did you start to cultivate that change? Like the smallest little thing that you started with?
Sure. So I believe it starts with desire.
Mhm.
The power of desire is changing in itself. I believe it changes someone's system automatically. It sparks them and it changes their path from doing the same unconscious thing over and over again in your daily routine to tweaking it a little bit. Even if if your five physical senses can't even explain how you're going to change, it's just kind of like desire it and then just go with the flow. So I had a desire to change because prior to becoming pregnant, I was addicted to alcohol. And this was my coping mechanism. It was like my numbing agent to actually, honestly, it's weird because some people say they gravitate towards like addictive substances to numb. I did it to feel. I wasn't taught how to emotionally understand my emotions and the way I feel, the way I think. It was very interesting. So I did it to feel stuff and feel things deeply. And it was the wrong way to go about it, but that's just what I did. So I desired change in that moment when I said, I don't want to live like this anymore, being controlled by something outside of myself. Like it felt so, oh my gosh, it just felt so like victim mentality, victimhood. It felt like I was suffering, like in the depths of suffering. So desire. And now what I understand is that once you make that desire, everything falls into place. You just have to be open for the guidance. And I started receiving the guidance and I was open. So just with honestly desire, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's so beautiful to even just say that, because it just, thank you again for being so candid with your journey, because I'm sure there's so many
Sure.
people who can relate, and it may not be alcohol for them, maybe something else, like whatever it is, but it's that same root cause that there is, like you said, either numbing or to feel that emotion. And you're so right. Like a lot of times you hear it as a numbing thing. So some people might be like, well, I'm not doing it for numbing, so maybe that's not me. But the fact that you say it was to feel something and to get in touch with your emotions, like that just may open someone up, be like, oh my gosh, that's what I'm doing, so thank you for
Hopefully, yeah.
sharing that. But it's, so many, I feel like with so many people I talk about, there is just such a disconnect with that emotion. And I don't know why we get disconnected, because as children, we're usually very connected. And I don't know what causes that as we evolve. I know life can often kind of shroud our inner core, but it's so beautiful when you talk about desire, where it's like that pain becomes so much that you just want something else. And it is about that, knowing that you want something, not necessarily the how of how you're going to do it. And so,
Yes.
yeah, that's huge. So once you started cultivating the desire and you were saying that you're getting guidance, how did you start to feel that you were being guided in that? Because again, if we're out of touch with our emotions, it can feel also like we may be out of touch with our higher selves too.
Definitely. And I will say that prior to, like I said, I was living a very unconscious life, right? So I wasn't connected to what felt like anything spiritual. I knew of God. I grew up Roman Catholic, but I felt so disconnected, right? So I started seeing patterns, and it started with when I actually went to go seek help. I sat within OCD and intrusive thoughts for about a month, suffering, thinking these thoughts are mine. And just to give some context, someone that suffers with OCD suffers with, and we all get intrusive thoughts, but for some reason, these thoughts sparked like this massive fear reaction. And that's what keeps someone stuck in this fear-based energy. And you can't reason your way out of this. Like, no, that's not. And the intrusive thoughts are horrific, like your worst nightmares, right? So, interestingly enough, I do know that I manifested that condition through all the negative, like, thought, through all the negative thinking, through all the negative cognitive habits I lived my entire life through, right? The overthinking. And I think my brain, like my system was finally at a point where it's like, enough is enough, I went to therapy. I was diagnosed, and oddly enough, I think it's the psychologist that diagnoses you, or psychiatrist. I don't recall, but This woman was, we spoke about so many different things, everything besides mental health and OCD.
Mm.
She was a pastor. She was telling me about divine intervention. She was telling me these miraculous stories that she had of instantaneous healing on her arm, like all these like spiritual things. I'm like, what is going on here? So it started with that. And as I said, I started going to therapy, but with anxiety disorders, you really had to find an anxiety specialist, I believe, right? And it wasn't a good fit. Um, the way that I sought help was I found a spiritual center, a yoga studio, and this woman was a spiritual healer. She was a medium, an intuitive empath. She was like my mirror. She related to my um, feelings and emotions and sensations and picking up on energy so deeply that I actually felt seen and heard. And through her center, she taught me how to heal, and that's through self-love. And that was the first time that I actually was like, what is this concept, self-love? What is this? You know, and I started doing things for myself. Just rituals, ceremonies, full moon ceremonies, just even journaling, writing something on paper, my feelings, my emotions, processing. And in that space, like I said, the signs and just like the patterns started falling into place where I could see that because I opened a door to spirituality, to God, universe, source, I could start pinpointing the connections between being guided and for like what for, why is this coming into my life? Kind of like, I guess you can say that. So
Yeah. Yeah. So what would you say it was giving you meaning towards everything that you have been through? Is that, would
I
that be
think
accurate?
so. Oh, you know what? That's
Yeah.
a really good way of looking at
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Because you know what? Honestly, even with within the mental health diagnosis, I went through dark night of the soul. I
Mhm.
went through spiritual awakening. So it wasn't even, it was everything. It was mental, spiritual, emotional, and physical. It was everything all at once. And I never really, I knew I wasn't going to stay in the suffering.
Mhm.
As soon as I got the diagnosis, I was like, oh, I could just change this. I'm like, I don't have to live like this. Like it's a diagnosis, but it doesn't mean forever. Like I had such freaking confidence in
Mhm.
that. I don't know where that came from. Maybe my, I guess you can say my, me being oblivious to what mental health actually is, or to like the brain thought, because I didn't know too much about it, I thought I could change it, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And just as you were saying that, you had said something earlier, and then you can totally see the transition, but you were saying how you felt like very much like a victim back then. And then now it's like you're speaking, you can just feel that you have that empowerment behind you where you're like, I can do this. Like, and that's such a huge difference where it's like when you're a victim, you hand over your power thinking like, either you can never be healed and never be better, or someone has to do it for you. But it's like you can just feel the energy. It's like I'm okay. I'm gonna get through this. I'm empowered. I know what I need to do. So it's absolutely amazing. I love that. And when you started feeling that energy, like how did you get in touch with your own energy? Because I know you went to the spiritual healer, but how did you kind of transition that to yourself where you could be in touch with your energy centers?
okay. So this is the interesting thing because it was the darkness. It was, when I say darkness, it's just truly just no direction, not knowing what's going on, right? How I became connected was the disorder of OCD. It's like if I didn't get that diagnosis in my spiritual awakening, I don't think I ever would have desired to understand what thought actually is.
Mm.
And because of that, I had to learn that thought is not mine. It is not ours unless we allow it to become ours. And I started trying to understand what thought is. Well, you know, chemically, what is thought? What is the brain doing? And I realized that I'm like, it's not only psychology, but it's quantum physics, it's metaphysics, it's all energy. All thought is energy. All anything is energy. So when I had that breakthrough of, I get to choose what runs through my mind and what I give my energy and attention to, it was like the path to self-awareness. Because when we can understand what is ours and what is not, that is coming out of this suffering perspective, this victim consciousness, this and taking our power back. So completely exactly what you said, like taking our power back. So really just trying to understand my brain, trying to understand what thought is, and that opened doors to like new desires and new things to learn about.
Yeah. And do you mind diving deeper into like learning, like how do we differentiate between like what's ours and what's not ours? Because that can be really like muddled. I feel like for someone too who's like maybe still in those like intrusive negative thoughts, it's like it's so true. Like I lived that for years. Like these are all my thoughts. This is who I am. And then it is like once you remove yourself from that, it does become clear. But how did you start to remove and or actually like separate what's you and what's not you?
Yes. So this is the interesting thing about energy, because it is, I don't know how to say this. It's all an experience we are supposed to be having. But to be able to discern what is yours and what is not, it within psychology, it does kind of melt together, because I do believe that like attracts like. So if there's a subconscious false belief living inside of you that is trying to be released, that is trying to be healed and integrated, you will attract things into your reality that mimic that same energy. It might not be the same belief, but it might manifest as something that triggers that subconscious belief inside of you, because you're seeking change, you're seeking expansion, and it's being presented right in front of you. So the tricky part is how do you become the observer of your reality? How do you learn to understand what the guidance is, where the guidance is? And it's really introspection. It's the desire to understand yourself, the desire to understand your power, everything that you are. And in that, you learn to understand what you are not, right? So even if you're having an intrusive thought or feeling energy, right? Feeling energy, and it puts you in a mood and it attracts the same vibrational thought patterns. This could be guidance to something that's within, or it could be someone else's energy, or it could just be fleeting, right? So truly understanding how to discern what is yours and what is not is becoming the observer. But becoming the observer has a lot to do with understanding the self on so many levels. And there's even subconscious false beliefs. I know you do a lot of work about reprogramming subconscious false beliefs, and I'd love to go into that if you're if you want to have that conversation, because honestly,
I'd love to.
it has to do with consciously aligned beliefs that will outweigh or release the subconscious unaligned false beliefs. So that's another step to it, I think.
Yeah. So when you say consciously aligned, because I just kind of like talking about that terminology, is it things that feel authentically you? Is that what you would say that is?
Yeah. So if I was to ask you, like, what has been coming into your awareness? What thought patterns, but more so like belief systems, what kind of ideas have been coming into your awareness that make you go like, huh, that's an interesting thought or an interesting belief? These, I believe, are when we choose change, this is the how. This is the stuff that we don't need to understand. It will come to us, because you're choosing change, you're opening the path for alignment and new belief systems. I believe we're always guided. I believe that we are always doing the work, even though it's not perceived that we are. Our body knows how to guide us. Our higher self knows how to guide us. We are highly intuitive, every single one of us. And when we start entertaining these trinkets of information that comes through either a podcast, a book, a TV show, your friend randomly says something, you walk past a stranger and they say something that like really intrigues you and inspires you, those kind of beliefs, I believe, are the breadcrumbs that we're supposed to start following, because in the long run, when you keep entertaining this consciously aligned belief, I believe what happens is that it gets imprinted and embedded into the subconscious, and it has a purpose. And its purpose is to rewire the old and become the driving force of your new life. And then when it's ingrained within you, that becomes an aligned subconscious belief, right? And you operate your life from that belief, your reality shifts, you change, your perception changes. So that's kind of what I mean by aligned. And I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. So that's the aligned beliefs, and they pop into our lives. I think they just pop into our lives.
Yeah. I everything you said, I completely agree with, because that was literally my experience. Like literally like to a T, like I was that negative thinker. I was that people pleaser perfectionist for years, thinking like the world is working against me. And like, it was those little things. I'm like, oh, I watched this documentary Heal. I'm like, oh, that's an interesting concept. And then like that opened up the next door. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna read this. Oh, I'm gonna listen to this podcast. And it was, and then it just completely evolved. So now I'm like, reading all these books, podcasts. I am bombarding my system with like different belief systems, and that are based on growth, that the universe is working for us, that change is possible, how to rewire our brain, like all those beautiful things that I think I was destined to find. But like, as you describe it, you're completely right. And just being open to it, like you said, is absolutely key. And not expecting like you have to be fully, like know what you're doing. It's like things are gonna unfold for you as they're meant to. And I love how you describe that, because completely spot on. Yeah.
So isn't that interesting? When you just said that, I was like, no way. Okay. Because I feel like if everyone looks back and maybe 5 years from now, looking at life backwards, and I think we understand life backwards, like we'll be able to see things differently. It's this whole like assumption that we need to know the path, that we need to know the vision, that makes change daunting. And I really do feel that we keep ourselves prisoners in the false belief that change is difficult. And it's not, because I truly believe that it's supposed to happen organically. It's supposed to, and it will happen organically. And just as you described your life, like that's organic. Like that sounds so organic and easy, right?
Yeah, 100%. And it's like, just like you said, organic is the most beautiful word, because I think sometimes people feel like they have to force these things. And then it's like, you rely on willpower, you're meeting a lot of resistance, and then you dread it. And then it's like everything backfires. But if you just kind of almost surrender to it, like I'm just going to be open and let things come to me, just like you said, organically, it's like you desire it, like you've been saying, and then you are like, you enjoy it. Like you're like, oh my God, it's so much better to live life with a mindset of abundance than the scarcity I've been living with for 20 years, and you start to see life through a new lens. And that's the most beautiful gift you can give to yourself. So yeah, I completely agree with everything you said. Yeah. I love that.
Amazing.
I want to dive into a little bit more, because I know you're very intuitive. Like, can you talk about how you've cultivated this ability to be more intuitive, in touch with the higher self? Because it can be really challenging, especially for someone who's been disconnected or is like, has all these thoughts, to start to like tap into that higher self within ourselves.
Sure. So it's interesting, because this has to do with beliefs also, and belief systems. And I didn't realize this. I always thought that I gained an intuitive sense, or I would say developed my intuition, because I do believe that we're all intuitive. I believe that we all receive guidance. I believe that source works through every single one of us. And sometimes you can know when you're channeling or know when you're getting a download or intuitive hit because it will feel like guidance. And then sometimes it's just you. Sometimes you're just saying something to the right person at the right time. And they're like, oh my gosh, we'll just say grandmother used to say that. And that just uplifted me so much. Thank you so much. And you're like, oh, sure. It's just me, but it's not. I think it's divinity. I think divinity flows through all of us. So I always thought, because I was diagnosed with the mental disorder in 2017, early 2017. I healed that within 1.5 years through self-love, through introspection, through understanding quantum physics and psychology and chemistry. And I opened my own business as a life coach. I became certified and accredited as a transformation life coach. But I noticed in the sessions, it was like source did not want me life coaching. Like, you set a goal, you create action steps, and this was willpower. Like you said, like willpower is sometimes difficult, if not always. If we're not programmed to do things with pressure, I don't think it's natural. So this was like the willpower approach to helping people change. But what I recognized that started happening during that time, I was developing my mediumship, because I came to recognize some of these intrusive thoughts. They were spirit. It was energy. It was all energy. And I was a medium, an intuitive empath. So I can feel energy. I can sense energy. And I started developing my mediumship. What was I doing? I was channeling, right? So what channeling actually means is receiving information via the communication of energy. Like, I think we all do this. I think we do this when we're not saying certain things. Our energy is always speaking to other people, and it's with great purpose, because we are here to help ourselves and then help others, I believe, right? So I recognize within my coaching business that I was channeling more than I was coaching. Like, these people needed to hear something that their ego, their persona, their personality was not allowing them to see. They had this lens, this level of awareness that was keeping them stuck. So I was connecting to their higher self and channeling perspective shifts. And you learn to understand the communication of information via energy through practice. And that was just my practice, helping other people. And I was able to start discerning, well, this is the way that it's kind of like, I don't even know how to say this, but it's like cause and effect, really. It's just because of A, then B. It's because you're saying this, then there must be something here, right? If there's this positive that you're aiming to work on, what's the polar opposite? What's the negative? That means you're focusing on this, right? So that's intuition. I used to think intuition was common sense. Like, I thought it was just common sense, but it's a different degree of understanding, I guess you can say. And really through practice, to sum it up, through practice, right? Through understanding what energy is trying to communicate through people, through experiences, through circumstances, through past, and through perspectives.
Yeah, no, it's such a great explanation, because I know we do hear intuition thrown around a lot, but like to really understand what that is. And I think everybody can understand that. Like we feel energy. You can totally feel energy off of people. It's like you walk in a room and like you can totally sense what the feel of the room is without even like, even if you're like, without anything going on, without hearing anything, you can get a feel. Or it's like someone walks in a room that's like really upbeat and you're like almost drawn to that, it's like those things happen. And it's like, yeah, I just like that, because I agree. I think we all are all intuitive. It's just how much are we open to it? And yeah, it's like you said, it's a process, and it's really working at it and and being receptive to that. So I love that. So
Definitely. Yeah.
yeah, no, I was gonna say, so as far as like your own self-healing journey, how did you start to like heal yourself from that? Like using, your intuition and all your resources. How did you start to heal from your mental disorder?
Sure. So I recognized that was what was keeping me, what had manifested as OCD. It's an anxiety disorder. So it literally scientifically means you're ruminating on fear-based thoughts, fear-based thinking, right? And anything can have the vibration, not anything, but there's certain thoughts that have the vibration of fear. There's certain thoughts that have the vibration of love, right? So I slowly began to just gravitate towards these beliefs. So number one, um, we are all here to first help ourselves and then help others. This was just something that intuitively felt aligned for me, right? So and this is kind of what I was talking about, beliefs. When you realize that everything is energy, that's another belief. Everything's just energy. So when you keep believing and thinking and recognizing that everything is just energy, guess what it does? It makes everything less powerful because it's just energy. And nothing is bad and scary and what you think it is. It's just all the lens of perception that we have been programmed or conditioned to see things as through childhood and through society. And when you can strip away these meanings to things, you really start to gain your power back, because if everything is just energy, then nothing can take power over you, because it's so, energy can be changed, released, transmuted, right? And I can do that, right? I can do that. So that it's really just beliefs. That belief, honestly, was, and this is where it happens so organically, because I'm telling you, when you start entertaining new ways of thinking, I always say you need to entertain new ways of thinking for new ways of being. It's
100%.
how it happens, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So it'll happen naturally and organically, and your life and your lens of perception will shift and things will look different. They're not scary anymore. These thoughts that I'm hearing or feeling, they're not mine. And it's easier to not entertain them and to choose to live a conscious life versus the unconscious program you're constantly cycling. It just makes it easier. New belief systems, it really does.
100%. There's actually a beautiful quote that I absolutely love. It says, "No problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it." And
I
it's
love
literally
that
that.
also. I
Yeah.
love that also. And it's so true.
Yeah.
It's just so true. What
Mhm.
is remarkable though is, so you have that, right? And you have that belief. And like, are you seeing your life start to mimic that?
Yeah, 100%. Like I
Yeah.
look at how I was like 5+ years ago and like where I am now, and it's like, yes, 100%. Like I've just evolved, and like my outside world is mirroring what's going on in my inside world. And I see that every day. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's so
Mhm.
amazing. I love hearing that. That is the best. Honestly, that is the best. And I remember hearing that also maybe 3 years postpartum. I remember hearing that exact same quote. And I don't remember who it's
Yeah. I
by, but
think
it
it's
was like,
Albert Einstein, actually.
oh
I
yes.
think
Oh my gosh.
yeah.
Love him.
Yeah, and he talks about energy too. It's,
Yeah.
it's never destroyed, it's just transformed, just like you're saying. It's transformed, transmuted. It's never destroyed. It's just going into different forms. And it's, again, like you said, I love your perspective on the energy, because it is just like you hearing that, it's like, oh, that's so empowering. Like, even like I was hearing, I'm like, yes, that's so right. It's so true. Like we have that ability to transform energy. Like let's use it to help ourselves and others. I love that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yes, help ourselves and others. And honestly, Albert Einstein, it's so interesting because spiritually, like I never looked at him as a spiritualist, but that man is a freaking spiritualist.
Totally.
Like it's
100%.
crazy the things that I look at, and this is change of it in and of itself, because I look back to some of the things that I've read maybe 10 years ago, and you look at them completely differently, and they bring you a completely different message, and you feel them differently.
Yeah.
It's like they feel more like truth now because you've gravitated to that way of thinking, you know?
Yeah, 100%. And it's like, you develop a different lens and then all of a sudden the whole world looks different to you. So
Yes.
it's just like that. It's like those, even just little things like quotes. It's like, yeah, you just have a different perspective on them. It's beautiful. Like you can see your evolution by those things that you have looked at years ago, and it's just night and day. And it's just,
Definitely.
yeah, so beautiful. I feel like we could talk all day. Like there's so many layers to this. But in the essence of time, I just want to give you, I would love for anyone who wants to connect with you, how can they find you and where can they connect with you?
And my company is called Solace. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you. Yep.
My company is called Solace, and sorry, I had an incoming phone call. And I said it like 3 times. My company's name.
That's okay. We're gonna if anyone that wants it, here it is.
Oh my gosh. And my website is Center of Solace. So Center of SOLACE. That's also my Instagram handle. And I primarily promote my work, my channeled guidance, my intuitive hits on my Instagram page. But my website is where you can find all of my services. And I have a podcast coming up. But I do help individuals through like their paradigm shifts. So everything we were talking about, and really this old way of thinking to new ways of being, when people are, I think we were talking about this before, when they're on the cusp of change and transformation, and they feel like something is changing, but they don't know how to get there. I help guide them into understanding maybe you're not supposed to know the how. Maybe you're supposed to sit, surrender, trust, and allow, right? Versus do, right? And that's where we get stuck. And that's when we don't allow the information to flow through the inspired action. So I have a 3 and 6 month program containers. It's called the Self-Realization Journey. I also mentor individuals to understand how to channel, how to do mediumship, how to develop intuition, but really how to discern what is theirs and what is not, right? So that we can become more stable in understanding who we are and become the observer of our reality.
Yeah, that's amazing. I will definitely put everything in the show notes for anyone who is
Thank
listening
you.
and wants to follow Aneta. Thank you so much. This has been such an insightful conversation. And just there's so many things that, again, for anyone listening, hear those little breadcrumbs that can guide you to something else. So take whatever you can from this and allow it to serve you in the best way possible. So thank you so much for everything today.
Thank you, Kelly. Honestly, thank you so much for having me. I'm certain that there's tidbits of something that will help someone. So I appreciate having the platform to share.
Absolutely, for sure. And again, for anyone who's listening, if you found value in this, don't hold it to yourself. Give it to someone else who can also benefit from it. Sharing this is really the biggest gift you can give someone to help them transform their life as well. So thank you so much again. And thank you for everyone who's listening today.
Thank you.